Well, guys, I'm back from the Atlanta debate. I know this video is a bit delayed. I should have done this yesterday, but here I am. And I will tell you about my experience because it was fairly interesting. I will tell you that at the end of the video. But first, let's talk about which candidate could defeat Donald Trump. USA Today asked this very question after the debate, saying, here's the real Democratic debate. Which one can defeat Donald Trump? Well, here's the deal. There were, according to my assessment, 3 candidates on that stage who could defeat Donald Trump. And those are the very 3 candidates that the Democratic establishment is burying in one way or another. Those candidates are Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, and Andrew Yang. Now, why do I think those 3 candidates have the best chance at beating Donald Trump out of all the candidates on that stage? Because they actually take from Donald Trump's electorate. It's not good enough to just have the vote from those who will vote blue no matter who. Those people are in your pocket. They'll vote blue no matter who. So anybody you put in the blue column, they will vote for. But there's a bunch of people. That's not good enough for them. They're independents. They are people who voted for Donald Trump this last time. And if you want to ensure a win, not one that's just close and you just barely made it, but a real solid win, you need to win those people over. So Bernie Sanders, let's talk about him. The reason why he takes from Donald Trump's electorate. Lots of people said that they were either going to vote for Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, and they were given Hillary Clinton. So they voted for Donald Trump. And the reason is they feel like both of those candidates spoke similar languages to them. They talked about workers, working class Americans who are struggling, who are worried about losing their jobs or who have lost their jobs and they've been shoved out to industries that they don't know anything about. So, the coal miners out there, the factory workers, these are the people that they're struggling, they're worried, their towns are collapsing, and they hear Donald Trump say, I'm going to make America great again. I'm going to bring back the coal jobs. Whether or not that was realistic or not, it's still saying music to their ears. Bernie Sanders speaks a similar language when he talks about raising the minimum wage, when he talks about providing health care, when he talks about making sure that corporations pay their fair share. Those are also words that speak to these people. These are things that they're worried about. So these 2 candidates spoke about workers, working class America. And that is why Bernie Sanders, if his name's on that ticket, many of the people who voted for Donald Trump would say, you know what, this guy, he didn't end up so great. We tried. We thought maybe, it's not really exactly what we thought. So yeah, I'm going to go for Bernie Sanders, another guy who has my best interest in mind. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, this is someone she is a major in the Army National Guard, and she talks about war and ending needless war. Now, you've got a lot of people in this country who they're either serving in the military or they have family members in that military. And they are hearing Tulsi and they're saying, yes, finally somebody who's willing to say it. Finally somebody who's saying, let's end these ridiculous wars. But guess who else said that? Donald Trump. So these are people that maybe they voted Republican before, maybe they voted Democrat before, but what they're caring about, what matters to them is their lives and the lives of their loved ones. And they hear Donald Trump say, I'm going to end these ridiculous wars. We've got war in Afghanistan, we're going to end it. War here, war there, let's end it. Let's have peace talks with people. Let's think about America first and stop sending our troops all around the world. That really spoke to those military families. That spoke to the loved ones and to the actual troops. And then they hear Tulsi Gabbard say it and they think, wow, a woman who's a military officer who has served 2 tours in the Middle East, who's been in combat, and she's saying, you know what, these wars are not what we thought they were going to be. This isn't what we signed up for. This is ridiculous and we want to end it. So for them, they're thinking, wow, okay. And she's a Democrat. She's progressive. She's for the environment. She's for, she's progressive. She's for healthcare. She's for all of she's got all of the progressive platform policies, but she's also saying, let's end these ridiculous wars. That takes from Trump's electorate. Andrew Yang, here is another one who takes from Trump's electorate. He's talking about a freedom dividend. This is speaking to those libertarians who tend to vote Republican, but now they see somebody else and they're hearing him and they're saying, I like this. Here's a guy that also cares about the environment. He cares about progressive policies, more liberal policies, but he also cares about us. He cares about giving us this freedom dividend that we can spend however we want, that's going to work for our families the way that we best see fit, that's not run by the government. But yeah, it's the government giving us $1,000 to spend in the way that we want. That sounds really good to those libertarians. So once again, libertarians who would typically vote for Donald Trump, or they would vote for a third-party candidate, they're voting for Andrew Yang. Those who would vote for a third-party candidate like Jill Stein, they're now voting for either Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders. So you've got the three candidates who actually have the best shot at stealing votes from Donald Trump's electorate. And yet those are the three very candidates that the establishment is burying. So let's talk about that. How are they burying Bernie Sanders? Well, where's the media on Bernie Sanders? Who's talking about him? Because every time I turn on the television, I never hear his name. He holds a rally, 20, 30,000 people show up. They don't talk about him. He's fundraising enormous amounts of money from individual small donors. He has more donations than the rest of the candidates combined, pretty much. And where's the talk about that? Instead, when they talk about him on MSNBC or CNN, it's largely negative. So the media has got this negative idea of Bernie Sanders, and they're trying to spin that to the people that watch their networks. We don't really see articles written about him. A lot of that momentum that should be around a leading candidate, because he is the leading candidate. I know people don't want to believe it, but again, let's cite the people at his rallies, the size of the crowds, and also the number of donations he's receiving from individual people. That guy's winning. Whether the polls tell you or not, whether the news tells you or not, he's winning. And they're not covering it. For somebody who's winning the Democratic nomination, there's not a lot of momentum behind him from mainstream. They don't want him to win. They don't want the guy that's going to shake things up, who's going to go in there and call out the corruption, who's going to go in there and end some of these structures that are enriching people while people are getting sick and dying. They don't want to end that. They don't really like him, so they bury him. Tulsi Gabbard. Now, do I really need to say how she's being smeared by the media and by the Democratic establishment? There is no other candidate that is getting it worse than Tulsi Gabbard. She is... They call her a Republican. They call her an Assad apologist. They say that she's cozied and buddied to Steve Bannon. They say that she's, they basically think that she's a Russian plant. They say all of these things about this woman who is currently in our military, who has served for this country in more ways than one, and who has extremely progressive domestic policies and has extremely progressive foreign policy. It's just that the Democratic establishment doesn't have progressive foreign policy. So they smear her. Andrew Yang. What do they do to Andrew Yang? Well, also they just ignore him. Andrew Yang, he just gets ignored. During the debate, he received an entire 6 minutes and, 6 minutes and 48 seconds of talk time in a 2-hour debate. Meanwhile, other candidates got double the talk time. It took them 32 minutes before they even asked Andrew Yang a question. They're just ignoring him. They don't want to hear from him. They look at him and they think, who's this guy? This is a guy who's never served in government. He's never been a politician. We don't want him. He's never even been a mayor. They do the same thing to Tom Steyer. They gave him very little talk time during the debate, not saying he's one that I think could defeat Donald Trump. I don't think he's one that could. But Tom Steyer, also, they pretty much ignored him. They didn't talk to him much. He got 8 minutes and 24 seconds of talk time during the debate. They don't want to hear from these non-politician types. They saw what happened to the Republican Party and Donald Trump, and they don't want it to happen to them. So they see those guys and they say, no. Career politicians only. Thank you. Yeah. And that's why they bury these candidates. And because they bury these candidates, Donald Trump's going to win again. Because anybody else, Warren, Buttigieg, Biden, Booker, Harris, Klobuchar, none of those candidates could actually take from the Donald Trump electorate. Sure, they're going to get all of the vote blue no matter who, right? You're already going to get those people. And they're probably, some of them, you've got like Buttigieg and Biden and Klobuchar who are really moderate people. Yeah, they're going to get the more moderate independents who maybe voted Republican last time, but that's not very many people. These are the wealthy class individuals who, if Bloomberg, he's potentially jumping into the race. It looks like more and more likely that he's going to. These are the people that vote for Bloomberg because they're rich. They're basically Republicans. They're just not racists. So those are few and far between. It's just not enough. Those people aren't loyal to Donald Trump or to the Republican Party anyway. A lot of them, they just kind of whoever. So it's just simply not enough in order to beat Donald Trump to get those independent, moderate, rich people. So that's the real deal here is now my prediction, and I've said this before and I'm going to say it again, I do think that the establishment is propping up Buttigieg. I said this right before I left to the West Bank, but I actually said it originally in September, I believe, maybe the end of August, where I said the candidate to watch, the one that I think the establishment is really going to prop up, is ultimately going to be Buttigieg. And I said this back when he had very little support and people thought I was crazy. But the reason I felt that way, and I feel like this now, is because Biden, it's really clear that his memory is slipping. He cannot remember. Now they're trying to pass it off like he's got a stutter from his childhood that's coming out. But, I think we all know what's really going on there. And they saw that Harris, she just wasn't selling. She wasn't winning over the votes. She wasn't winning over the people. She's just too much like a cop. People don't really want that. So I think they saw the writing on the wall and they started to put their resources around Buttigieg. He had been raising loads of money from big money donors. He takes the PAC money. He does all of that. And I do think that they're aiming for Buttigieg, Stacey Abrams ticket. He needs the black vote. Stacey Abrams is extremely popular in the South. I was just in Georgia. They love her. She's an excellent speaker. I don't know a lot about her policies, so I'm not going to comment on that. But as far as her charisma on stage, she is excellent. She's an excellent, charismatic speaker. And I do think that they would put Buttigieg with Stacey Abrams to make a ticket to try to win over the black vote. And, they say, oh, Buttigieg, he's from this small town in Indiana, so he's going to get that white vote. And he's gay, so the liberals that really want to see diversity, they're going to love him as well, even though he's a white man from Indiana. Everybody will overlook it because of his sexuality. So he's kind of this package that people are looking for, especially if they put him with Stacey Abrams. That's my prediction. And I predicted it before, that they're using Warren to split the vote. That's why they talked to her a lot during the debate. She got 13 minutes, whereas Sanders got 11. And they're using her to split that progressive vote from Bernie Sanders, so that way Pete Buttigieg can come in and take all. So that's my prediction there. Now, let me just talk to you about the debate. I was able to go and check it out and be in the crowd. First of all, the crowd, when you're there, is much, much smaller in real life than it looks like on television. I noticed because we were watching the screens, when they would pan to the crowd, it just looked like this really full auditorium of people, a really big auditorium of people, and it was actually quite small and quite intimate. There weren't that many people there. It was really interesting to see the difference between what was being shown on television and how the candidates were reacting on the stage. So there were moments, for example, when they weren't asking Bernie Sanders about Medicare for all, and they were asking other candidates, but they weren't talking to Bernie. And you could see he was visibly becoming very agitated by the fact that they weren't asking him. Finally, they did go to him, and he says, yeah, thank you, I wrote the damn bill, right? You could see Andrew Yang getting more increasingly frustrated that he wasn't being asked questions as those minutes went by, as the half hour went by, and they weren't asking Andrew Yang, and he's the only candidate who hadn't been asked a question up to that point. You could see Tom Steyer becoming visibly agitated when there was a back and forth exchange between Warren and Booker about billionaires. And it was like, why don't you ask the billionaire on the stage what he thinks? I mean, he's standing right there. Why don't you ask one? You've got one. And, he's kind of standing there like, and you see all the candidates kind of doing this with their hands, me, and them getting ignored. So that aspect of it was really interesting. However, when you're there, you're far away from the candidates. You don't really get to see their facial expressions as much. You do have to see that on the screen. And so it was almost like Might as well watch it on television so that you can really see how the candidates are, their facial expressions as they're speaking. The security for the debate was really interesting. They had us meet at an offsite location to get on a shuttle. They highly recommended that we take an Uber to the shuttle location. Then we got on shuttles. They had police escorts where they stopped traffic. It was extremely seamless. The security was top notch. They had us on these shuttle buses. They escorted us to the debate. It was very quick to get there. Then they had us in kind of a holding area where we got to hang out for a little while. But they did ask us to be there 5 hours early. Which was so long. And then once we got into the debate, you know, they sat us 4 hours early. 2 hours early. And of course, the debate's 2 hours long. So you know you're going to be trapped in this debate hall for 4 hours where they don't give you any water and there are no bathrooms. And they tell you if you get up to leave to go to the bathroom, you will not be allowed to be you won't be let back in. So people were like, oh my gosh, 4 hours. We have to sit there with no water and no bathroom. It's going to be miserable. And it was, in a lot of ways, that aspect of it was pretty miserable. But, it was a really unique experience to be there. There were a lot of people. The crowd in Atlanta, I got to say, each town each city where these debates are held, it's going to have a different vibe. And this crowd was tough for Tulsi Gabbard. This was a tough crowd. It was also a tough crowd for Pete Buttigieg. These are Buttigieg. He's got a real problem with the black electorate. He's got the racial issues that from when he was mayor, or he still is mayor. And that doesn't sit well with that crowd. And you could feel it in the crowd. When he would speak, the crowd wasn't friendly. Tulsi Gabbard, Atlanta, Georgia is Hillary Clinton country. They really love Clinton. A lot of them really like Biden. Quite a few of them were Warren supporters, but they're pretty, that area of the country, they really liked Hillary Clinton. And so because of that, they really did not like Tulsi. And you could feel it. The crowd was hostile. Whenever she would speak, everybody around me was very rude. They were like, I hate her. They were actually whispering things. It was just a really, really tough crowd. I think for Tulsi, it was a really rough night. I know she was very sick and she had to really pull herself together to get on that stage. She was in bed before that debate and she was in bed after that debate with being sick. So not only was she not feeling well, but then on top of it, the crowd was hostile. And afterwards, the press was largely very hostile. There was Steve Schmidt, who is it Schmidt? That's right. He was really hostile to her on MSNBC during Chris Matthews' show. And, it was a tough crowd. It was a really tough crowd for some people. It was a great crowd for Booker. It was a decent crowd for Harris, but they really liked Booker a lot more than they liked even Harris. It was a good crowd for Warren and Biden. A lot of these people were real big supporters of those candidates. But it was just a really interesting experience being there at that debate and seeing it live in person. Atlanta is a beautiful city. I'd never been there before. It was, I got to say, one of the most beautiful cities in America. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting to see so many trees, but they are a lush, green, forested city, and it was just absolutely beautiful. The people in Atlanta were wonderful. So thank you to all of you who I met there. I met some watchers of this show, some viewers, and just the other general people I met in Atlanta were really wonderful, warm people, welcoming people, just a really great place. So I had a great time. Thank you so much for watching. That's, I believe, I don't know if there was anything else I wanted to say about the debate. I think one question that people do ask me is, how do I think the candidates did? And, oh gosh, for Tulsi, I felt like this was tough. Like I said, she was sick. I know she was sick before and after, and this was a tough crowd. The energy in the room, whenever you're standing on a stage, you feel the energy. It kind of seeps up. So I think it's rough. It's hard to say who did well during this debate. It seems like when you're reading the news, everybody's got a different answer of who they think did better than others. To be honest with you, I felt like a lot of it was a wash. And I think a lot of people didn't even watch this debate. It's the 5th debate. People are kind of over it. They've already decided who they like in a lot of ways. And I think now it's just, I know they're having another debate here soon, but I think it's just kind of getting to a point where it's time to vote. Let's just vote and let's just see who does well in those early states, because I think that's going to surprise a lot of people. I think the candidates who come out on top in those first few states is really going to surprise a lot of people. So thank you so much for watching. That's what I've got for you. Subscribe to this show, please. Hit the bell so that you get the notifications for when I post more videos. I do have some more stuff coming out regarding the debate. There were some things that were said during the debate that I'm going to hit separately. So there was some foreign policy stuff that we're going to talk about. There's also this notion that, you can't, how dare you talk to Fox News, or how dare you sit down with foreign leaders that we don't agree with. There was a lot of that that I want to talk about. So that will be in separate videos. Right now, thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you. Please subscribe, and until next time, thanks.